Yes, every day at noon, I'm here with you on Amazon Live as well as on Facebook Live and YouTube Live as well. So I'm thrilled to be with you. Any questions, comments, I welcome. I love sharing inspirational thoughts and in the form of books. To me, I could basically sell anything. I have for over 20 years in the home shopping industry. And so when it came to what I wanted to do with my newfound free time, because I'm still working, of course, but I'm not going into the studio. So I have a few hours of free time every day. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to use it for something great. And I couldn't think of anything better than to read a book a day and then to show up as my accountability practice and be here to share about it. And hopefully it will inspire you as well. So I also have it in the carousel. So if you are interested in shopping on Amazon Live, I'm going to highlight it for you in the carousel, and then you can select it, choose it, own it, buy it, and read it, and hopefully be inspired by it. So the books that you're going to see in the carousel, I'm going to just type in on the chat here, hello, so that we can open things up. I'm glad that you're joining me on Facebook Live. Thrilled that you are here on Amazon Live and on YouTube Live as well. So every book that you see in the history, and I'll add the links on Facebook and on YouTube as well, are books that I have reviewed previously this year. So every day since January 1st, I made it my New Year's resolution to read a book a day. And I wanted to do something that had some accountability to it. I didn't want to make a gym commitment. How many years have I done that in a row? I'm still going to just work out as hard as I ever have, which isn't that hard. But I wanted to do something that was about self growth, and that's why I chose this practice. So every day at noon, I'm here with an inspirational book review. Today, we're going to talk about unconditional bliss, finding happiness in the face of hardship. And I know a lot of us have had a lot of hardship over this last year where we've spent more time at home. So, what better time to be inspired? So, this is a book by Howard Raphael Kushner. And again, as many of the books I've read, it is simple, but it's not always easy. It is a very easy read, I will say. And let's just dive right in. So he breaks it down in very small, easy to read chapters, two pages, 3 pages. It's not a large book, just in general, with only, I want to say 100 or so, yeah, 180 some pages, close to 200 by the very end. But again, a smaller book, and the Audible version is available for you. So I did put, I think, the Kindle version, I believe, in the chat. And I'm just looking at our little Amazon Live. So welcome. I see you. Thank you for being here. I'm thrilled that you're joining me. And I'd love to have you follow. If you like inspiration and you want to hang out with me every day at noon, then let me invite you to follow me here on Amazon Live as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to be here every day. All right, so as we dive into these small, pretty easy to understand chapters, he gives us some beautiful positioning in the beginning. Everyone wants to feel good. Naturally, we gravitate toward it in our regular activities. Pain, go to pain, avoid pleasure. He says, there's all kinds of sophisticated strategies too, like delayed gratification. For others, it's as simple as going out and doing what you love. So all human beings are complicated, and each human being is unique. As a result, there are countless variations in pursuit of pleasure. And he's going to share with us his way of unconditional bliss in this book. He says there's even obstacles to surmount. Some people think that they have deeply held beliefs of how much pleasure they're allowed to have. He says what unites most people in their pursuit of pleasure is the idea that it arises in response to an experience. So you do something and it makes you happy. He's going to argue against that in this book. He says sex, money, power, love, these are all seen as exceptional triggers. At the same time, thoughtful people understand that none of these triggers provide long-lasting pleasure. It's all momentary. A person's inner environment can foster and sustain it. So here begins his premise. A person's inner environment can foster and sustain us. Now, I have to say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I have owned this book now for probably 20 years, and I just read it. And uh, how fascinating was it to me to read that? If you want lasting pleasure, it's about a person's inner environment can foster and sustain it. So, in the pursuit of inner peace, we spend countless hours and billions of dollars, right? Books, therapies, techniques, self care, meditation, massage, whatever the case might be. He goes on. I'm sort of waxing poetic a little bit and elaborating on his examples that he gives: yoga, meditation. We hope that becoming better, happier people, our actual experience of life will brighten as well. This approach often leads to success, he says, but life is still hard. He says, for everyone, great suffering never fails to make an appearance at some point along the way. No amount of inner work can prepare us, for example, he says, for the death of a loved one. And I can certainly appreciate that. Want to say thank you. By the way, I see you joining on Amazon Live. Thank you for being here. I'm thrilled that you're joining us. We're talking about Unconditional Bliss, a book by Howard Raphael Kirshner, a book from 2000, the year 2000, but the principles are so relevant, especially in the time that so many of us are looking for happiness and bliss, right? We've been through a lot this last year. Imagine an existence of constant, ever available bliss. I like that idea. Imagine that this bliss asks for nothing and depends on nothing. Okay. Are you as intrigued by that as I was? Imagine that this bliss asks for nothing and depends on nothing. Hmm. Imagine that it is the very foundation of all experience, and not even the most tragic of life's events can alter its strength or presence. I know that this bliss exists. I know because I live it, says the author. And I believe that you can too. What's more, in order to live in the radiance of this bliss, you don't need to be like me or anyone else. You don't need to have faith in God or any creed, whether you're shy or you're loud or you're Christian or you're atheist or you're revolutionary or you're uh, arch conservative. This bliss belongs to you. Okay, so now he piqued my attention, right? I'm like, okay, tell me more. All right, then you must be asking, so where is it? I love that. So where is it? That's what I like about this book. It's really, really easy to read. The answer is simple. Bliss to which I'm referring is deep within each one of us, always present, but rarely chosen. To choose it requires asking two questions. So here we are on page 2, and he gets right to the basis of what the whole book is about, and the answer to what the whole book is about. Two questions. We need to ask these questions with great patience and intention. So he goes on to say the book is broken into different sections. And he says, if you want, to jump straight to it, you probably want to read the book beginning to end. He kind of gives you, I love this. So many great authors do this. They kind of tell you a little bit of how to read the book. If you just want a summary, go to this page. If you want this, go to this. I love that. Finally, it needs to be said that this book belongs that nothing in this book belongs to me. I love that. Some of the greatest teachers, authors of my life have said, this is not my message. It's something that's coming through me. Take it or leave it. No skin off my nose. I love that. That detachment from it makes me intrigued even more. But I don't think that that's the point. I think the point is that he means it. He feels like this is a universal principle, if you will. This bliss, as well as the questions that lead to it, are a product of the great mystery at the source of all existence. All right, so are you intrigued? Two questions, he says. He says he knows a lot about bliss. He says he went through a lot of hardships, but he says that's not the premise of this book, so he doesn't really want to go into all his personal detail. Although I will say he shares a bit of personal struggle and tragedy along the way in the book, but he gets right to the point instead of kind of this long meandering trail of sort of building empathy, because he says he's not really trying to convince you of anything. He says most personal development books are going to do this song and dance of drawing you in, making a present, making a assertion, and then making points to try to get you to buy into that assertion. And then by the end of the book, you either, make your decision of, yes, I do agree, or no, I don't agree, and go your separate ways. He says, this is not the point of the book. The point of the book, in his opinion, is he wants to share this. He wants to kind of outline it and make it digestible and available. And then it's up to you. So he says he did go through a tough time. And at some point, he was cracked open. And that was uh, from the outset, I decided to pay very close attention to what was happening. I felt like my own life now contained the message I had been seeking all along, but I wasn't going to let that message elude me. I didn't. I got it. And now I pass it along to you, he says. Don't believe a word I say. And then he goes into what I was just saying about how a lot of books have a thesis and then set out to prove it. He says, I don't want to prove anything, nor do I claim a shred of expertise. I don't expect you to trust what I say. In fact, I hope you won't. He says, I'll present you with a series of observations from my own life, and they've led me to believe what I believe. And then he says, test it out. So um, I invite you to doubt my observations like a reasonable and skeptical scientist. Okay, what is it, right? 2 new tenets, he says. This is not a New Age book, a term that was really popular around that time, right? Right at the turn of the century at 2000. He says, this is not a New Age book. In my experience, 2 key tenets are at the core of most New Age thought. The first is that each of us creates our own reality from the world we see around us and the world uh, to the world we find within. He says, according to this logic, anything we don't like, we can change. The trick is to learn how we've made it, and then we can redirect the process to get a new result. Approaching this way, he says, to life can be valuable and self-empowering, but he says from his perspective, it can overemphasize that sort of personal control that we have, because sometimes stuff just happens, right? And we're not always in control of it. So he says that kind of lens or viewpoint can then give us a denial of what is. And that so struck me as I was reading it this morning, because I've lived that. I was very much a positive, and I still am, very much positive, think positive. I love Tony Robbins' work, changed my life with personal power. But I do think that I lived in that space for so long that I did become a little bit numb or unaware, if you will, of what was, as certain situations were arising without me. I would just look pretty good, right? So he says here, from my perspective, it can overemphasize the amount of personal control we actually have, and the denial of what is. And then we'll soon discover it actually prevents change from taking place. That really struck me. The second core of the New Age tenet is that each one of us uh, possesses unlimited potential. If I can merely tap into this potential, then all love, health, success, power, money in the world can be mine. All the books, tapes, seminars, how many of us have done that, right? Offers for unleashing this potential. Um, I do think all of that is amazingly helpful. Um, but he says this book is not one of them. He says, though success, power, money are often a byproduct of living the questions, he does agree to that. They're never the goal. Our focus will remain on moment to moment experience. That's where he's going. Now, if you were with me on January 1st and I did a big review of The Secret, the next generation, the sequel to the original Secret, um, then you probably have an inkling of what he's talking about here, which is really, really interesting because they're woven together really, really tightly. And I think I put that book, I can highlight it for you, as a matter of fact. If you're joining me on Amazon, it's all the way down. The Secret. She just released this about, I want to say 3 or 4 months ago. And where is it in here? Oh wow, there's a lot of books in the stream. Give and Take, The Artist's Way, Atomic Habits. We've been going through some really good books this year. Okay, there it is, The Greatest Secret. So I'm going to highlight it for you right now because it's very similar to what we are going here after with Unconditional Bliss. The same similar premise, which is interesting because this book was written in 2000 and The Greatest Secret, I believe, was written in 2020. So kind of cool. Okay. So, what we'll examine in the following pages is an outlook that separates our state of being from all we do or don't achieve. It's an outlook. Okay, part 2, basic bliss. Let's get to it, the 2 questions. Excuse me, I have a little bit of sniffles. A defining moment. Think of an activity that gives you great joy. Got it? Think of an activity that gives you great joy. Now, think of a person whom you love as much as anyone on earth. Think of a person that you love as much as anyone on earth. Okay, got it? Something that you really enjoy, a person that you love the most. Now, take a deep breath, smile, and bring that joy and love together. Okay, so think about an activity that you love the most, a person that you love the most, and kind of be in that moment, right? And he said, that's it. Joy plus love equals bliss. There you have it on page 15. Joy plus love equals bliss. Now, he says it's that simple. That is the formula. Only we need to add a refinement. He says, as long as bliss is centered on the action or a thing, then it's bound to come and go, right? It's dependent, if you will. So he says, he investigates then, okay, how do we kind of parse this out and help it be more permanent versus kind of waxing and waning, being dependent on a person or on a thing? He says it's the human condition. So we all face problems. Then he goes on. So basically, I mean, that is the book in a nutshell. You get to, page 16. There you have it. It is really fascinating. The rest of the book then goes on to kind of define it and parse it out and give you a little bit more detail and a little bit more thought going into deeper into those questions, which I really think is fascinating, right? It's about, again, joy plus love equals bliss. Okay, now how do we get there if we're not talking about a person and an activity? He talks about the universe and all of us contracting or expanding. And this was a really interesting exercise. So let's try it together. He says, think of someone or something you really can't stand. Now, he says, really go there. Like, don't just pander with it, but really think of something that really irritates you or a person that really grates your nerves. So I had it. I got it in my mind, right? Okay. Then he says, now let yourself well up with these negative emotions. Go for it with gusto until your whole being seems to brim with agitation. Now, take a step back mentally, become the observer, right? Like Wayne Dyer says, and observe the result. Do a quick scan of your physical senses. Notice what it feels like to be in your body. Well, all of those unpleasant feeling, where they concentrate. Where do you feel that? Are you clenched shoulders? For me, it was in my jaw. He said, if you're like most people, this experience is one of clenching and constricting. Isn't that interesting? your whole body goes into a state of contraction. The contraction builds in your gut, immediately spreads outward, concentrating your shoulders, your breath. Being contracted, he says, is being closed. So now he's giving us the how to. I love this. I really love this book. I can't believe I've owned this book for so long. And I'm so glad I made that New Year's resolution to read a book a day and show up for an accountability practice. And I'm so glad that you're here with me as well. I see you joining me on Amazon Live. Thank you for being here. If you like what you see, let me invite you to follow me. I'm here every day at noon with a book review, some oldies but goodies, and some of the classics I have coming up because I want to revisit The Road Less Traveled and um, Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power. There's some books I'm saving for special days. Um, However, every book, it seems like there's so many gems that are coming out of them. Usually motivational books, usually related to business in some way, but sometimes just for personal gratification. So this one, okay, so here we go. This is about when you're contracted, you're closed. We've gone over what he's looking for is what is the key to living in bliss, unconditional bliss all the time. He says it's emotional and it's inside of you. It's a combination of joy and love. And in this case, he says, now, if if you're one of those people like me who use thinking to keep you from feeling, you might not even be able to feel that in your body, um, or you try to think your way out of all of that tension. I was like, oh, ding, 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 that would be me. Bliss, on the other hand, is about being open. So now he's given us an exercise in feeling closed or angry or constricted, right? And now he's saying, okay, let's go to the other end of the spectrum because that's where bliss is. So, upon reading this, it might seem that contracting is bad and expanding is good, but that's not the point at all. He says this is the way things work, right? There's the ebb and the flow. He says, with regard to energy science and mind body medicine, it's common in some circles to talk about esoteric concepts like opening and aligning with the chakras, the mental body, the subtle body, the emotional body. In another context, these may be useful, he says, are important. But he says, all you need to know about energy as far as this bliss is concerned is that this fundamental dance of contraction and expansion. When you're feeling joyous and loving, that's expansion. There you have it. He said, it's literally that easy. So I encourage you to investigate this yourself. I love that. I love that he just offers it instead of saying, I know the truth, come follow me. He just says, I encourage you to try it out. Check it out on your own. See if it rings true with you. Okay, he says our goal is guaranteed access to bliss. Understand that contraction and expansion are the first steps. The answer arises from paying closer attention to the causes of contraction. Forget about expansion. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Why do we want to study the bad to get to the good? But he's got a purpose to it. So, resistance. He says, whenever we don't like something, we kind of push against it, right? And each time it may elicit a particular emotional response. Completely instantaneously, bam, we feel that, right? Now, here's the thing. Whether it's Viktor Frankl, whether it's Wayne Dyer, whether it's, I think it's in the Gita, I, I think it goes back to so many authors and so many legends and great works of art, even Deepak Chopra, the space between the thought, the moment between something happens and you react or respond to it, there's that space, right? That space, he says, is where you can choose your bliss. When we hold on to that contraction, after that instant it is over, we align ourselves with its rigid quality, and that's a personal choice. We are choosing resistance. Resistance is a denial of what is, and it's wasted effort. The rest of the chapter goes on to describe that the faster you can accept what is, not justify it, not make up reasons for it, not go down that road, just see it for what it is, just be aware. Then you have the ability to make different choices because you're not justifying, you're not getting stuck in guilt or whatever the case might be. And Alice, I want to say thank you so much for following me. I'm so glad that you're here. And Alice Bisanto, believe I'm saying that right. Oh, no T. Bisano. Welcome. So glad that you're here. We're reading about unconditional bliss, by the way. So the resistance occurs when we cling to the contraction. So, what is the key? If you are ruminating, and I am so guilty of this before as well, he says, "But what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do when I'm annoyed and afraid?" He says, "If you pretend otherwise, you're just faking, right? So you don't want to pretend that you're not annoyed. You don't want to push that down, or there's a psych word for it, right? Repress it." He says, because then it's going to, linger in your body. He just says, instead, just see if you can meet it with acceptance. Interesting. Simple, but not easy. All right. There is nothing unworthy of acceptance. Now, he does an entire, more than one section on this premise. There's nothing unworthy of acceptance. So if I were to parse that down in this chapter 7, uh, to accept something because it exists is not the same as masking it is okay, he says. There's nothing unworthy of acceptance. It's about as close to a universal truth as we could ever come. So I had to really think about this because the negatives throw me sometimes. There's nothing unworthy of acceptance. So we need to accept what is another form of the same thing, right? As I'm just kind of mentally going through it. So what he says, that's the secret. That is the secret. That's the secret in the book, The Greatest Secret, as well. Let me take you back, by the way, because I'm sharing about unconditional bliss. So if you're joining me on Amazon, I'm going to pop back over to the book that we're reviewing, which does have similarities in many of the premises the main premise to The Secret. Okay, Unconditional Bliss. Whether you enjoyed it in the audio version or the Kindle version, I love the Kindle version. And of course, I'm reading the paperback. So he says, this is the key. The faster you can just let in what is happening, become the observer, pause, become aware, then the faster you can get to this unconditional bliss. Awareness. He says, it's as near as the next breath. The first step is the most challenging but requires no movement. All that is needed is to bring our resistance into awareness. Awareness, a widening of the immediate experience that allows us to detach from resistance long enough to recognize it. And then he goes on like a AA to say, I am an alcoholic. I hate my job. I can't stand the taste of my, like, to just be like, say it like it is, right? The recognition of resistance resonates throughout our entire being. We feel it physically, emotionally, whenever you're just wishing something wasn't the way that it was. With practice, it can grow into, he says, I love this, a sacred habit. Discussing awareness this way might make it sound easy. No such luck. The adhesive that blinds us to resistance is as powerful as it is invisible. So again, awareness becoming the key. When I'm able to gain awareness and attach, the reality of my condition is just there. That just happened. It's just an awareness. I'm free to see it with greater clarity. So again, kind of that concept of detaching. This happens in a very direct way without fail, no matter the person or challenge, if I can follow it. And so as a result, it increases our capacity and our effectiveness. Who doesn't want that? right? We work smarter, but not harder. So basically, it comes down to gaining that awareness, feeling whatever you're feeling, taking a moment, and then pulling back and seeing it with greater clarity. And there you go. And then he goes on to kind of parse that out. So he makes these simple but not easy premises throughout the book, and then starts to distill it a little bit more for us. And then he gives us really, tactical um, instructions. The first try. Well, sometimes it's said often, he says, we teach the things that we most need to learn ourselves. I was like, oh, yeah, that's why I'm reading these books, right? That's why I'm here. Then the second try, he says, it's just not that easy, right? So he says, break it down into this. What is happening right now? Can I be with it? What is happening right now? Can I be with it? That's it. The rest of the book, all the rest of that book goes on to explain the first 30 pages, 36 pages. What is going on? What can I be with it? Um, and then once the venting runs its course, which shows quicker and quicker with practice, it becomes possible to listen for a truer response, not a judgment, not a shoulda, woulda, coulda, but just what is happening. Just see it. And then ask, can you be with it? And then as the tools get more rigorous and more interesting through the rest of the book, I would encourage you to buy it, to read it, to live it, to try it. Um, I think living it is a bit aspirational, right? But that is the goal, isn't it? Unconditional bliss. So there you have it, my brief summary of Unconditional Bliss. I'll leave you with some summary of his own in the back. He talks about the mystery. The only way to achieve maximum openness is to arrive at it every single moment without preconception. Love that, right? So it's just simply about doing the work. So again, he just says, do it. Ask the ask the questions. Try to show up from that place of awareness. What is happening? Can I be with it? There you have it. And the more he says you can be with it, the more you will find your unconditional bliss. So for me, good inspiration for the day. I certainly hope it's good inspiration for the day for you as well. And I want to say thank you for joining me on Amazon Live. Thank you for joining me on Facebook Live. And thank you also for joining me on YouTube Live. I'll put the book available for you in the comments section. If you're joining me on Amazon Live, it is highlighted right now in your carousel. So you are welcome to select it that way. All right. That concludes my time with you today. I'll see you tomorrow. Go play.